Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission, as always, is to really unpack complex topics, and we do that by digging into specific source material that you provide.
That's right.
Today, we're tackling, well, a pretty fascinating and definitely provocative piece. It's excerpts from a YouTube video, actually.
Okay.
Titled The Relationship Between Liberalism and Psychopath. It's from the Aquarius Waive channel. So, our goal here, our deep dive mission, is to explore the claims, the arguments, the evidence this specific source presents.
Just focusing on what's in the source.
Exactly. We need to be clear. We're not endorsing any viewpoint here, just dissecting the material provided.
Got it.
So let's unpack this. This source, wow, it doesn't hold back, starts right out of the gate saying terms like narcissist are thrown around too much.
Okay, common enough point.
But then it completely flips that, claims they're actually underused when talking about, and it names them, progressives, liberals, neo-Marxists.
Oh, okay. So underused for those groups specifically.
Yeah. And it goes on to state that the majority of these individuals are, and I quote, psychopathic and narcissistic in nature.
Wow. That's a huge assertion.
Huge. And here's where it gets, particularly interesting. It claims this is backed up by bipartisan, non-political research. That's the claim.
Bipartisan, non-political research.
That's it.
Quite a specific framing. What's really fascinating, though, is how it immediately connects a political label directly to psychological traits.
Right.
It frames liberalism specifically as almost like a form of identity destruction. It even poses this really intense rhetorical question. Something like, who would destroy everything around me for the sake of my own identity?
Even their own newborn, it mentioned.
Yeah, even their own newborn for some quasi-cause that sounds like a cult ideology. I mean, that's the language it uses.
Wrong. So.
Very. And then it just flat out says, this is full-blown narcissism. So it really sets the stage very forcefully for its core argument from the absolute beginning.
No kidding. Okay, so from that really strong opening, where does it go next? It seems to pivot to what it calls its core research claim.
Right.
It pulls out an article title, apparently reading, Left-Wing Extremist Linked to Psychopathy and Narcissism, dated 2023.
Okay, a specific article.
Yeah, and it says this article attributes its findings to a new study. Published, it says, in the peer-reviewed journal Current Psychology. And that study is based on existing research.
Peer-reviewed Current Psychology.
Okay, now, according to the source, this study it predicted, that people with higher levels of what it calls left-wing authoritarianism, or LWA,
right.
that they would also report higher levels of narcissism. That was the expectation.
Okay, so the study anticipated this link.
Oh, yeah.
But what's really striking is how the source emphasizes this finding. It uses this incredibly dismissive phrase.
Oh, yeah.
It says, left-wing extremism is linked to toxic psychopathic tendencies, and narcissism also. Water is wet, the sky is blue, grass is green, and so are you.
Wow, it just states it like it's the most obvious thing in the world.
Exactly. That rhetorical flourish, it just slams the point home, doesn't it? It positions the finding as completely predictable, almost trivial. And, when we talk about LWA, left-wing authoritarianism, in psychology research.
Yeah, what does that usually mean?
It typically means like a tendency towards really dogmatic belief in left-wing ideals, and importantly, a willingness to suppress opposing views or dissent.
Yeah.
It's structurally similar, actually, to how right-wing authoritarianism is studied, just focused on a different ideology.
Okay, got it. So, yeah, framing that finding as water is wet is pretty intense.
After setting that up, how does the source then handle the terms themselves? Like narcissism, you said it started by saying it was overused.
Right, it circles back.
But then underused. Does it redefine it?
It does, yeah. It challenges the sort of common idea of narcissism being just about grandiosity, feeling superior.
Like someone who just thinks they're the best.
Exactly. Instead, this source argues narcissism is, at its core, an inferiority complex that just looks like superiority on the outside. It calls it a shame-based disorder. A shame-baser.
Interesting. So the arrogance is what? A mask?
That's the idea presented here. Arrogance is framed as a byproduct of insecurity, and it argues that people who are deeply insecure will actually tear others down as a way to build themselves up. And then it connects this back to control. It posits that people showing these traits, they want to see you and I controlled, apparently would do anything for that to happen. So it shifts the focus from just ego, like you said, to this deeper, maybe more manipulative drive for control that stems from feeling inadequate inside.
Okay, that's quite a redefinition. So if that's the underlying psychology according to the source, how does it explain why these personalities, these dark personalities as it calls them, would be drawn to activism?
Well, it introduces this specific concept, a term apparently coined by the study authors it cited earlier, Chris Spence and Alex Bertrams. They call it the dark ego vehicle principle.
The dark ego vehicle principle. What's the idea there? The core idea, as presented by the source, is that people with these so-called dark personalities, high psychopathic traits, are specifically attracted to certain kinds of political and social activism.
Attracted? Why?
Because, the argument goes, the activism itself serves as a vehicle, like the name suggests, to satisfy their own ego-focused need. It's not about genuinely achieving social justice and equality.
So the activism is just a means to an end for their own ego.
That's exactly what the source argues. It's very explicit, saying it has never been about equality here. It really tries to flip the script on the assumed motivations behind activism for people with these traits.
Okay, so the motivation isn't social justice, it's ego. What specific opportunities, then, does the source say activism provides for these individuals? How does it feed that?
Right. It gets specific. It claims activism offers chances for positive self-presentation, basically looking good. Yeah. Also, displays of moral superiority, showing how virtuous you are. Then there's gaining social status, dominating others, and even engaging in social conflicts and aggression, purely for the thrill-seeking aspect.
Thrill-seeking, like getting an adrenaline rush.
Yeah, seeking cortisol and adrenaline rushes is how the source puts it.
And does it give examples of that thrill-seeking behavior in activism?
It does. It mentions alleged behaviors like breaking into and burning buildings and cars, throwing rocks at cars during protests, things like that. It claims these are driven by an incessant need for thrill. And it uses some pretty strong language to describe these individuals, calling them deviousness and maliciousness, and saying they exhibit Machiavellian traits.
Machiavellian, meaning like cunning and manipulative.
Yeah, basically, deep manipulative aspects.
Yeah.
The source claims that for the psychopath, social justice is often used as a guise to behave unhinged. So the social justice label is just cover for acting out, essentially.
Gotcha. So if these are the traits and motivations, according to the source, how does it say this plays out in terms of actions towards others or maybe institutions? It mentions suppression of speech earlier.
It circles back to that, yeah. It links these traits to specific actions. Citing the research again, it notes that individuals high in LWA, that left-wing authoritarianism,
right,
they might declare anyone to be old-fashioned who is opposed to their own progressive values. Pretty dismissive.
Okay, labeling dissent.
And more actively, they strive to suppress free speech, specifically to regulate the expression of right-wing beliefs in educational...
Suppressing speech in schools, universities.
That's the claim. And crucially, it emphasizes that these individuals even endorse the use of violence to reach their own political goals.
Wow, endorsing violence.
Yes, and it uses the phrase by using any means necessary. Really potent wording.
Does it give examples of this alleged violence?
It does cite a couple of specific alleged incidents to back this up. It mentions 10 of these Antifa liberals attempting to take the lives of ICE agents, saying one agent was hit in the neck.
That's extremely serious.
Extremely. And it also mentions the blowing up of Teslas as another example. These are presented as direct outcomes of these supposed traits and the endorsement of violence.
Okay. The source then moves on to another concept, this idea of enemies from within. Sounds provocative. What's that about?
It is provocative. The claim here is that people from privileged backgrounds who align with LWA often use their narcissism to make activism solely about themselves.
Instead of the actual cause.
Exactly. Instead of genuinely working towards social equality for struggling groups, it becomes about their performance of activism.
And who are these enemies within?
Well, the source specifically warns minority groups. It says they should be aware of the narcissistic enemies from within their activist groups. And it points particularly at so-called white liberals.
White liberals specifically.
Yes. It presents them as often being the most extreme about their allyship, but claims they're actually the most manipulative, viewing other people in the movement as just pawns or tools for their own ends.
That's a very pointed accusation.
Very. It even claims this game, as it calls it, has been going on since 1965. And it brings up a historical figure, Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ.
LBJ? How does he fit in?
The source labels him a psychopathic narcissistic individual. It claims he only pretended to be for the black plight after JFK was assassinated, despite having previously campaigned against desegregation.
Okay.
And it adds that he was supposedly forced to write that piece of legislation presumably the Civil Rights Act, by a Republican House and Senate.
Yeah.
The overall point seems to be that these narcissistic individuals can effectively hijack the cause.
Hijack it and therefore reduce its success.
Thereby reducing the success of the activism. Yes, that's the connection it makes.
Following that idea of manipulation and self-interest, does the source talk about ambition, like wanting power or influence?
It does, yeah. It touches on the desire for influence and also claims these traits are disproportionately prevalent on the left.
Okay, how so?
It describes grandiose narcissists as wanting fame, distinction, elevated social status, and high social importance.
Yeah.
They want to be seen, basically. So they strive for influential positions, roles with visibility, outreach, access to money.
Makes sense if the goal is ego satisfaction. Does it name names again?
It does. It explicitly names Gavin Newsom and Ilhan Omar as examples of, and again, this is direct language from the source, clinically undiagnosed psychopath.
Wow. Okay. Very direct, very strong claims about specific people. And the prevalence part, it thinks this is more common on the left.
That's the assertion. It acknowledges, that authoritarianism isn't exclusive to one side. There's tons of research on right-wing authoritarianism, RWA.
Right.
But it claims research on LWA, left-wing authoritarianism, is still rare. And the reason, according to the source, is because LWA is actually more prevalent in left-wing ideology.
More prevalent. Why would it be, according to them?
The source's logic is that it's somehow easier to hijack something that seems on the surface to be about people. Things like, caring for the poor, the homeless. It presents these causes as easier targets for manipulation.
And does it offer an example of that hijacking?
It uses homelessness in California as its example. It mentions $34 billion being allocated to solve the problem, but claims homelessness gets worse. And then it throws in the accusation that individuals involved are allegedly buying $10 million mansions, implying the funds are being misused due to these underlying motives.
Okay, linking alleged corruption back to these psychological traits, there's one more major claim we need to cover, a really controversial one about mental health. What exactly did the source state there?
Yeah, this one it's pretty jarring. The source makes this flat statement that 54% of liberal women are classified as, or it specifies white liberal women, classified as mentally ill.
54%. Classified as mentally ill. By whom? Based on what?
Well, that's where it gets vague. It attributes this to these very same studies, but then immediately hedges, saying, or not the same necessary study per se, or the same researchers, but the same body, the same governing body over this sort of politically driven, psychology-driven information.
So it's not clear which study or governing body it's actually referring to.
Not specific at all. And it frames this claim using that same dismissive water is wet formula again. White liberal women are mentally ill. And water is wet. The sky is blue, grass is green, and so are you.
Just stating it as an undeniable fact.
Exactly. But it's crucial for us, and for you listening, to note that the source provides zero specifics here. No clinical definitions of mentally ill, no methodology for how this classification was supposedly reached, no clear citation for this governing body. It's a very bold claim presented without substantial backing within the source itself.
Understood. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground here, a lot of really strong claims from this one particular source. What does this all mean for you, Arla? We've taken a deep dive, as promised, into this specific and, yes, impactful YouTube video excerpt. We've explored its pretty bold assertions about psychology and political leanings. From this dark ego vehicle principle idea to redefining narcissism as shame-based to these really direct claims about how activism might be used or misused. It's definitely a unique perspective, highly critical, obviously. And again, we've just reported on what the source contains. We're not endorsing these views, just laying out the ideas presented in the material.
Absolutely. And if we try to connect this to the bigger picture, maybe zoom out a little, this deep dive really brings up an important question, doesn't it? How do you critically assess what motivates people in social and political movements, especially when you encounter sources like this one, suggesting these complex, sometimes hidden psychological drivers.
Right. Are things always what they seem on the surface?
Exactly. This kind of analysis, controversial as it might be, pushes us to think about not just what the actions people take, but the potential why behind, at least the why as interpreted through these particular psychological lenses.
Different ways of looking at activism, at power.
It encourages us to consider all these different frameworks, even the really contentious or provocative ones, for understanding human behavior in the public square. So the final thought maybe is this. What stands out to you about the perspective offered in this source? And how might exploring ideas like these even critically influence how you process the information you come across every day? Something to think about.